No.
Just Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim and HaKodesh.
Best place to be.
Place to be is right here, my friend. In Chabad Sola.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm waiting for Shmulik. Just made a test. Okay, all right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim. Rambam, Hilchai Shagagos, Prakim Gimel, Dalid, and Hey, beginning with Perek Gimel. Now, even though we do not say Migu to go against Edom, we don't say Migu b'makam Edom, but as we will see here in our chapter, that there are times that we interpret someone's words because of a Migu in a certain way for it not to be contradicting Edom. So de facto, Migu will help the person's word, so to say, looking from a certain angle, override Edom, as we will explain. Now, we're going to begin emphasizing that one chatos is brought for one specific aveda. We're going to have a great application of the rule that ein ba'alei chayim nidachim, as we will learn. And furthermore, we're going to have a yisoid that people that are chayiv to bring an asham talui, if the day of Yom Kippur comes and goes, the day of Yom Kippur exempts them from the asham talui. Perek Gimel has 12 halachas, and let us dive right in. Beginning with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam. Mi shehidu all of Edom shachatachet, if there were witnesses that testified regarding a person that he or she sinned, what type of sin? A sin shechayavim all of chatos kavua, as we began in the first chapter of Hilchos Shagagos, right? Generally, an active violation of Allah, for which b'mezid there is a chiyuv kares, you have to bring a chatos kavua. However, v'loy hisru boi. In other words, I want to make it clear: if they warned the guy prior to doing it, that's the definition of a mezid. He was warned, mamash toich they did. In other words, they did not warn him, so it's not a mezid. They're basically saying that he's chayiv to bring a chatos. And Ella Amru, what they tell him is, for example, that Anu Ri'inucha, we saw you, Sha'asisa Malacha b'Shabbos, that you did a Malach on Shabbos, or that you ate Chalev. No, it's based on their testimony. He should be chayiv achatas. Now, what does he say? Who oimer ani yoidea bevadai shelo yosisi davar zeh. He's saying words that contradict the Edom. I know that I did not do what you are saying. Now, normally, you're kidding. Someone's word against witnesses, he's not believed. Here it says that Rambam einor chayiv chatos. He doesn't have to bring a carbon chatos. Now, why? If he would have said that mezid hoyisi, that I did what you said, but I did it knowing that it's prohibited, he would be exempt from a carbon, because the whole premise of a chatos is only when you did it b'shoigeg. So kisha'amar lahem lo yachalti v'lo yosisi, even though the words that he said was, I didn't eat it, or I didn't do that malacha, it's as if he's saying, I didn't eat it b'shoigeg. Now, again, what's very important is like this. If he said explicitly, Kevan, I did not eat it, not shoigeg, not mezid. I didn't do that action, not shoigeg. If he said those words, he would not be believed. It's very important that migu b'makam Edom trumps migu. The meaning over here is that it's as if he said, as long as we can interpret his words to mean that I did it b'mezid, that's the meaning, and that's the case where we say einoi chayav chatos, halacha beis. Now, shasek, if this guy against whom the word the Edom was quiet, v'lo yiflik es ha'edom, he did not contradict the witnesses. El afilu amroi isha achas, even if one ate, even if someone that normally doesn't have the ne'emanus, so you have a woman that tells a guy, you ate chaylev, or asisa malacha b'Shabbos, and he's silent. Here we do say chayiv lahavi chatas. He has to bring the carbon chatas. Furthermore, One witness testified regarding something. This is chaylev, and he's quiet. In other words, he accepted that it's chaylev, and then he goes and he eats it bishgaga. He has to bring a chatos. Furthermore, if after only one aid said this is chaylev, then he's about to eat it, and two people warn him, he's going to be chayiv malchus. Even though it's all based on the testimony of one aid, doesn't matter. In other words, the one aid is not being mechayiv this guy malchus. One aid establishes that this food is not kosher. Aid echad nemen b'yisur. One step. Once it's established that this food is aser, now he's going to be chayiv malchus. Another detail, you should know that if there was already a chazaka that this food is kosher, then one aid won't always be believed to make something that's muchza kosher into trade. We're speaking over here in a case where people did not know the status of the meat. If there was no chazaka, then one aid is so memon that based on that he can be chayiv malchus. Guys, we learned this in Perek Tezvav. That after a person designates a animal for a carbon chatos for that specific sin, he cannot bring the same animal on another sin for which you also chayiv chatos, for chilul Shabbos or for blood that this person ate. Shemar, as it says, "Vehevi karbanoi siiras izim," and the Torah writes, "Al chatos soy asher chata," for his specific sin that he sinned. In other words, achi yer karbanoi l'shem chetoi. And once the animal was designated for a specific sin, you can't change its designation. And that's not only lechatchila, but that's even b'diavad. Furthermore, the person ate chelav yesterday, and they separated an animal, and this person again today ate chelav again. Wow. Now here it's for the same sin, but it's for another act of that sin. So here it's only a din of lachatchila. Lachatchila don't do it, but the imhevi yes keep it. And the ein tzarich loimer that imefrisha aviv umeis, that if someone's father ate chelav and he separated the chatos and the father passed away. Now if you remember, one of the chatois hamesois is a chatos shemeisu be'oleh, which is what happened. And even though ben muchayva isachet. No need to say, because here it's not only a din of lachatchila, but here it's also, you have that other addition that since the owner passed away, that chatos has to be put to death. If a person brings one animal for two sins, it means he didn't separate one animal for one sin, one animal for two sins. So what do? You can't bring one chatos for two sins. On the other hand, this animal was designated. So tira achipol beimum, allow the animal to go into the pasture. You can't do this actively, but you have to wait until it gets blemished. The animal then is allowed to be sold, and you divide the money that you receive. Half of it is for one sin, half of it is for the other sin. If you have to add more money to buy an animal, so be it. If you can get away by using half of the money for one animal, also good. Like this, your pledge came to fruition. Two people, each one did a sin, and they collectively bought one animal. Similarly, the animal should be for both of them. They didn't know you can't do that, but you can't. So tira achipol beimum v'timacher, and the yavi zechatasi b'dmei chetzia. The yavi zechatasi b'dmei chetzia, so you don't remove the designation, comes to fruition. Halachei. Hey b'shtei chatois al chet echad. If a guy buys two animals, or he brings to the Beis Hamikdash two animals for one sin. So here, Yaakov Ezu Hishayirza, and Vahashniya Tira Achipol Bomum, and then with the money you buy in a dava, very similar to someone who's mafresh two animals. One should be the achrayas, just in case I lose one, I have the other. Here it wasn't for achrayas. Here this person thought that you can bring two animals for one sin, but you cannot. One animal for one specific sin. Halachavav. Hevi shtei chatois al shnei chatoim. And when he separated the two animals, he did not specify which one is for which. So since he left it open, now it's good. Because we had this in Perek Gimel. this unique rule that if a person, God forbid, changed one's faith, be converted out, or if this person specifically is Mechalel Shabbos Bifar Hesya, however that's defined, Ein Mekabel Mimenu Karban Klal. Right? Adam ki yaakov mikem, Chazal say, mikem from you, v'loy kulchem. Ironically, a guy who's an Oved Avodah Zarah is allowed to send an oila. A Yid may not. A person is sinning in one specific area, then they don't accept, the Beis HaMikdash will not accept the chatos for that sin, for example. If a person is meshumad lechol chelav, one thing, his weakness, he eats chelav. He happened to eat chelav b'shoigig. He would have eaten it b'mezid also. But he ate it b'shoigig, and now he hears about it, he brings a chatos, we don't accept the chatos until he does tshuva. Because the point is, even if he would have known, he anyways would have said, even if this guy is eating non-kosher, not because he's rebelling, but because, he has the Yetzer Hara here also. And he thought he's eating shuman. He ended up eating chelav, and he brings a carbon, or even that's called the meshumad for one specific aveda. You accept a carbon chatos for another aveda, unless the guy is a meshumad la'avodah zarah or mechal shabbos b'faresya, but not for that specific sin. Hoya meshumad lechol chelav, and this person b'shoigig ate dam. Dam is something that he doesn't eat, so yeah, you accept it, even though they're both in the same category of machalas asuros. Halacha ches. Misha shagag v'hifresh chatos. He sinned b'shoigig, and he already separated an animal. And then the guy, God forbid, he converted, the nishtameh. And during that time, we would not have accepted that animal. And then he did tshuva. Wow. In other words, he separated the animal when they would have accepted it. Now he did tshuva. But there was an in-between time that had he come, then they would not have accepted the animal. Or similarly, nishtata, if a person became mentally incompetent, which also during that time, they would not have accepted the animal. And then v'chazar v'nishtapa, he got well. Even though there was a period of time where this animal would not have been accepted, it was pushed away. We do re-accept it. Sometimes we say hoyel v'nitcha nitcha, but not over here. Why not? As the Rambam gives, already paskin many times, another great application. She'ein balei chayim nitcha. A living animal cannot be halachically excluded, pushed away. As we learned in Tzolei HaMikdash and Pei Gimel, and as we have continuously many applications of this rule. And therefore, guys, we're in the middle of halacha ches. Yakrivena atzma. Uchashem shenoilad baymum oiver v'nirpa yachzal lekashrus. The Rambam gives an additional analogy that if the animal would have become temporarily blemished, so at that time you can't bring the animal. But if that temporary blemish goes away, then the animal is brought back. So why should the owner be different? Him becoming a meshumad is a temporary blemish. If and when then yikrav. Why the Rambam needs a raya, I don't know, but the Gavaldik, it's a great analogy. Now we are learning the final topic of this Perek, which is mamash awesome. Person was chayv chatos. Person is chayv and asham. But in asham, we have the category of asham vadai. And now comes Yom Kippur, and they didn't yet bring it. We don't say that the day of Yom Kippur brought such a level of atonement that now they are exempt from the carbon. No, they have to bring it. This is a build-up to now, the Chiddush. However, a person is chayv and asham totally. Just for example, a person had in front of him or her 2 pieces of meat. One is halachically shuman. The other one is prohibited chelev. And the person ate one of the 2. They b'chlal didn't know there's an issue. But then after they ate it, someone says, "Oy Gavalt, how can you eat? There was chelev here. I don't know which one you ate. He doesn't know which one he ate." That would be an example where the person has to bring an asham tali. And all that means is that until he becomes informed of what he ate, maybe never, maybe he will become informed, at least he doesn't allow for the punishment again. It keeps the punishment hanging. And by the way, if he discovers later that he never ate the chelev, he didn't bring, God forbid, chulin la'azara, he fulfilled his obligation. And in reverse, if he discovers later that he ate the chalev, he has to bring a chatas. The Asham totally does not exempt him once he becomes better informed, but in this period of not knowing, that's what he needs to do. Here the Rambam says that if Yom Kippur comes and goes, he becomes exempted from an Asham Talui. Shenemar, a pasuk in Achrei Mois regarding the power of Yom Kippur, that Mikoil Chatoisechem Lifnei Hashem Titaru. So that's the way we interpret it. Mepi Hashemua, this is the way Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, that what's the Lifnei Hashem? Everything is Lifnei Hashem. It's hinting to the following. Shekol Chet She'ein Makir Boi Ela Hashem, which is exactly the case of an Asham Talui. You don't yet know what you did. Only Hashem knows all. That is brought about, an atonement is brought about from God through Yom Kippur. This chaperly. Lefikach. Bishabal Yodei Sofik Aveda B'Yom Kippurim. Another detail. What part of Yom Kippur does it? Even if it happened im chashecha. Im chashecha means either before Shkia, really it means even after Shkia. If someone perhaps violated in the beginning of Yom Kippur, the Rambam is trying to say you do not need the whole 25 hours of Yom Kippur to come and go to exempt you from the Asham Toli. Every hour of Yom Kippur brings about that atonement. Even if you sinned on Yom Kippur, but he's emphasizing the beginning. We'll see what he's excluding. Patem Asham Toli, Shekol Hayoyim Mechaper. Shekol Hayoyim means not that you need the whole day. Any part of the day. But the Rambam is basically implying that if this person did something, let's say, the words of Chazal is Samuch l'shkiyas hachama. Samuch l'shkiyas hachama means it's not after Yom Kippur, but it's mamish by the end of Yom Kippur. Then he will have to bring an Asham Tol. Now, say Solomei that she'ein mivyin al loy hoida. Shal Yom Kippurim Asham Toloi al loy hoida is the words that we use for an Asham Tol. You don't know. Elam Kain loy Kippur loy Yom Kippurim. Only if Yom Kippur did not bring atonement. As we'll explain in the next halakha. And in other words, aside of the fact that if a person sinned towards the end of Yom Kippur, then Yom Kippur doesn't exempt him from the Asham Toloi. There are other scenarios where Yom Kippur will not bring about that atonement, and let's go learn halakha yud. In Yom Kippurim, you should understand, not Yom Kippur, not the Korban, they on their own do not bring atonement. Ella al hashavim. Only if they repent and they believe that there's such a thing called repentance, and they can receive a kapara. Someone who's rebelling against Yom Kippur, God forbid, rebelling against korbanos, then these korbanos cannot bring atonement. Like for example, if a person is, let's say, a person is in a state of rebellion. And for whatever reason, during that state of rebellion, he brings a schatas or a zash. And what do I mean by a state of rebellion? Not a rebellion, Yaakov, in action. Rebellion in chayvas halavavis. He's saying to himself, why is he bringing it? I don't know, socially, to make someone else happy. In other words, there is an essential element to the avoid of korbanos. Rahmana liba boya to a higher degree than in other mitzvahs. When we say over there, you don't need kavanah. Here, after the person has to believe in it. And when this person, for sure, will do tshuva, and they're going to later believe in the koyach that Hashem gave through the mitzvah of the korban, then they have to bring another korban, even though they brought it already. And v'chein hamavayit b'yom kippurim ein yom kippurim mechaper ol. So now let's go back to what the Rambam was alluding to at the end of Halacha Tes. And comes and goes the day of Yom Kippur, but during that Yom Kippur he was meva'id boy. He rejected the notion that the Yom is mechaper. So now you're now the back. The chiyuv of Asham Tali is back. It never was removed.
But don't we say Yom Kippur atones for everything, even
Very
though
good.
It doesn't matter what
it does not atone if you are rebelling against Yom Kippur. No, it's even if the person, there's a difference between not doing tshuva and rebelling against the tshuva, rejecting the notion of Yom Kippur. One of the ways that a person rejects Yom Kippur is if a person was machalol Yom Kippur itself. That's a sign that he's rebelling against Yom Kippur. Even according to Rebbe that says Yitzuma Shal Yom Mechaper, but not for the rebellion. That's what we learned in the Gemara. If you're fighting against Yom Kippur cannot help. If you're neutral, then it helps. Halacha Yudah. Kol Hashem Shabbat Torah. Or every Karban Hashem that we're going to dive in more details. Ma'akven Asakapara. If you don't bring that Karban, Chutz Ma'asham Nazir. Because an Asham Nazir, no, we're speaking about an Asham. A Nazir. That became Tameh. And if you remember the dinim, as we'll learn more details, we're going to chazer it again, is that even if this Nazir, right, did not bring the Karban Asham, the Nazir who became Tameh has to bring 3 Karbanis. Right after he brings the Chatos, he has to re-begin counting. That's the halach, right? So the Tumas mace cuts off the other numbers. He has to demetide himself from that Tumah. But after the Chatos, he begins recounting. Is the Haraya that the Asham is not Ma'akev. Now, Safek Nazir. How can it be a Safek Nazir? I'll tell you right away. He became a Nazir, and something happened, and you have a Safek whether he became Tameh or not. And while you are in the state of Tumah, all of the previous days are rejected. You don't know whether he's a Nazir right now. Usafek mechusrei kapara. I'll give you an example. A person is a Zav, so he has that unnatural seminal emission. First time, he has a din of a Balkedi. Second time, he's for sure a Zav, but he doesn't have to bring the kapara after the 7 days. And then there's a suffix whether he had a third re'iyah. That's a great case of a suffix mechusre kapara, because maybe if he had 3 times, he has to bring the kapara, a Zav gedoyla, and if not, he doesn't have to. Suffix soita. Now here, suffix soita doesn't mean what the other word suffix. Suffix soita is every soita. Every soita is a woman that there was a suffix if she had intercourse with that man or not. So there's an inherent suffix tuma to every soita. So kula miviyim karbanesayim achar yom kippurim. Not like ashum taloi. There's also a suffix, but that's different. There, the chayav vaday to bring an ashum taloi. There, the day of Yom Kippur, lifnei Hashem removes it. But we don't say this by other sveikos. And the final halacha yud beis, mishu mechoyev chatos, oyasham, v'harehu yotzei, lei hareg mi beis din, because he did another sin, a capital sin, and he was found guilty. Question is, do you postpone his death, allowing for that additional carbon to be brought? Paskins the Rambam like this: only if only if his carbon was already slaughtered. In other words, they didn't yet do the Zrikas Adam. Since the animal was slaughtered, they say, Mashin Oisoi, they wait, they delay his death. And as we learn in Hilchos Sanhedrin, that normally we're not allowed to, once there was a psak din, even though that there was a flag system, and if on the way walking to the Beis Haskila, if he would argue, I have a psanu claim, then sometimes they would bring him back the first time, the second time, and then they would hear his tinus. But other than that, you have to right away put him to death. Here, they would wait. Achi Zarek Adam. I know you can say it's a minimum amount of time, but normally you don't wait at all. And then he's put to death. But if the carbon wasn't even slaughtered, even though he's badechai vachatas. So why don't you can argue, let the carbon be brought. You don't do that. You don't wait, you put him to death immediately. And the dinner will be as the dinner are. By a chatas shemesu golel, then the animal has to be put to death. By an asham, if I'm not mistaken, yiru achipol baymum. And then you bring it as a oilas nadava, whatever the halacha is in each respective carbon. Okay, Pedic Dalit is in halacha wise is a very only 5 halachas, but it's an awesome Pedic. We had these cases when we learned the Gemara. The premise and the sophisticated, complicated cases will be here to illustrate a couple of points. Point number 1 is that when a person does many sins, the Helam Echad, we're speaking about many different sins. The person didn't know you can't eat chaylev. Yeah. The person did not know you can't eat dam. The word Helam means in one lapse of unawareness. We have to become familiar with that word. Because if a person did a sin while they were a shogeg, but then they became aware that that is prohibited, even if, say, the person is getting gold, so they forget. They forgot again, and they committed the same sin, but that's in a new lapse of unawareness, they'll be chayv 2 chatoros. So first of all, we're going to clarify, helamachas is essential. In other words, if someone repeats the same sin again and again and again, the Behelamachas, the chayiv one chatas. But if they did different sins, even though they were all Behelamachas, they will be chayiv a chatas for each and every sin. Now, another premise: if a person did one act, but that one act is in violation, the words in Chazal is against different shemois. We're not learning Kabbalah. The word shemois is a hazara. Hashem says, don't do this, don't do that. The thou shall not do is called the shame. If a person did one act that is in violation of various shemois, then he's going to be chayiv, even though it was one act for different chata'os. However, you have to remember that there are many times that we say that ein isur chal al isur. If something is already prohibited, you cannot add another isur on that same action. We're going to have examples, and the three exceptions is if both isurim were chal bebasachas, then isur is chal on isur, or if the second isur is called an isur koilo, or if the second isur is called an isur moisav. I know we keep on reviewing these halachas. This is the pedic that will have the opportunity to speak out clearly. Right? People know this. They just only ask a person, what's the difference between isur moisav and isur koilo? Well, we learned this together, but many people forget. We're going to really chazer properly, and we will apply it. So therefore, the Rambam will give a case, amazing cases. The person will give a case that a person had a relation with one woman, and is going to be chayiv to bring 8 chata'os. And that will be the greatest, and the Rambam will give you a mashal of that. If there would be a chart, it would be awesome. I'll do my best to explain it. Sometimes if you don't chap it the first time, you're going to have to learn it again. Actually, there won't be an isur koilal example, but there's going to be isur babas achas, and there's going to be many cases where there's an isur moisav. Again, we're going to learn in this pedic clear the difference between isur moisav and isur koilal. Let's right away dive in, and people really should sharpen their minds. If there would be a chart, it's not that the ideas are not complex and they're not abstract, but it's like learning Yavamis. It's going to be like a Yavamis scenario where you're going to have to hold a family structure, and to make things even more interesting, the Rambam does this on purpose. The Rambam is quoting certain biblical characters, but not the way they were in reality. Like we're going to learn about a Yaakov that married Rachel and married Zilpah, but in the Rambam's case, if I'm not mistaken, Lavan was not a father to both as they are in the Torah. We'll get there when we learn inside. So no, we're going to be using characters that you know of, or Yishmael and Yitzchak. In the Rambam's case, they were only related paternally and not maternally. He's using names that we are familiar with, but he's building it on a different family structure as we had it in the Torah. It's only partial alike. Okay, Perek Dal, the beginning is Pasha. Halach Aleph. Ha'oisa averos harbe behelam echad. So if a person did not know you can't eat chayla, a person did not know you can't eat dam, and the person ate both, it's two different sins. Even though she didn't know behelam achas, chayiv chatas akol achas v'achas. That's a simple rule. It's for every thou shall not another chatas. Afilu asa hasholish va'arboim. Even if the person violated all the 43, the ones that were enumerated yesterday in the first chapter of Hilchos Shgados, even though, by the way, it's not shaykh to do all 43 at one time without getting into the details. The Rambam is just explaining that it doesn't matter the number. Maybe shalosh raboim chatois. If you remember in Hilchos Shabbos, we learned that even though you can argue, God writes once loy sasem alacha, but we learned that loy sevaro ish b'chol ma'shvei was lachalik, that you're going to have to be chayiv. Every single malach is like another sin. Okay. So if there was 9 Shabbos and Shigagos Malachis, you're chayav, all 39, theoretically. Another important thing: if a person did one action, not different that, not chaylev, and he also ate down. He did one sin, but that one sin is prohibited from shemois harbe. Get used to these words. Shemois harbe is, like we said in the intro, there are different psukim, there are different hazaros. God wrote in different parts of the Torah not to do that for different reasons. Even though you did one action, behelam achas, if there are different shemois, then again, theoretically, you'll be chayiv. I'll call shame the shame. However, based on the rule of ein isur chal al isur, when do we say you'll be chayiv? Even though you did one action, various chatois, shiyu asurim kulam boim ka'achas. If either of these prohibitions came at the same time, I'll just give you a simple example. A man cannot have a relation with his brother's wife. A man cannot have a relation with a married woman. If your brother married a woman, so she at the same time became your brother's wife, at the same time she became an Eshes Ish. If a man had a relation with her, the brother-in-law, Bishoigeg, he'll be chayv 2 chatois. I ain't Isur Halal Isur. No. She became Eshes Ach and she became Eshes Ish at the same time. Simple. Or Isur Moisa. So let me say like this. If a man had a relation, I'm going back to my case, with one's brother's wife while she was a Nida. Now, having a relation with a Nida in itself is Chiyuv Kares, B'mezid, which means B'shoigeg Yechayiv Chatas. The man, he'll be Chayiv 3 Chatois. So 2 is, she's married, she's your brother's wife. That's Isur that Wachal Basachas. The Isur Moisev means is that since she, let me use the words Gavra and Chefze. Moisev is on the Chefze. Since she herself is prohibited to all other men because she's a Nida, even to her husband. So since her status of Nida affects her, therefore, even to the men that she was anyways usher to have a relation with, now you have an added Isur. The Isur is on that Chefza that was already usher. In our case, the woman. That's a case of Isur Moisav. Or the third exception, when do we say Isur Halal Isur by Isur Koilel? Now let me give you a great example of Isur Koilel. Not where the Chefza has an additional Isur, which is Anida. The example that Rambam gave before for Isur Koilel is, guys, let's go back to our Chalif. So if you have a part of a kosher animal, the fats, the halachic fats, which may not be eaten on the penalty of Kares, the Shoigeg Chatas. What happens if a person eats on Yom Kippur, stam? Eating on Yom Kippur, Chiyuv Kares. Eating on Yom Kippur, B'shoigeg, Chayiv Chatas. If a person eats Chalav on Yom Kippur, we don't say, ein Isur Halal Isur, and you only chayiv 1 chatas, you chayiv 2 chatos. Why? That's called Isur Koilel. Isur Koilel means the Chalev did not become more usur. The Chefza that was usur before, guys, remember this, did not have a new Isur. The day of Yom Kippur, something outside of this, the day of Yom Kippur does not allow me even not to eat kosher food. So since the day is not allowing me, the Gavra, to eat any food, so it also includes Chalev, even though the Chefza of Chalev is a Davar HaAsur anyways. That's a good way of framing it. Isur Moisev is the Chefza, Isur Koilel on the Gavra. It's good to know this. By the way, the Rambam, again, for some reason, not only will not explain Isur Koilel here, I'll tell you the reason, because the Rambam already explained the example that we gave was in Hilchos Yom Kippurim that we learned already. Well, the Rambam already explained Isur Koilel. He never explained Isur Moisev. The Rambam is going to give these amazing scenarios, all using either Isur Halal Isur or Isur Moisev. Okay. Now, Kesar, again, like we just said, Kesar is not explaining the Isur Koilel. Kesar is the Isur Moisev. Hashoichet behemas kachem b'chutz lazar. B'Shabbos, lavei dezara, oy gewalt. Each one by itself is a Isur of Kares, which means each one by itself, if one did it b'shoigeg, the chayev chatas. Here, the Rambam is pointing out you did one act, but since there are 3 different shemos, again, ain't Isur Halal Isur. No, as we'll see, no, here, this will be in the exceptions. Isur will be Halal Isur. So he explains this. You're chayiv mishum shecher kachum achutz chatos. You're chayiv because you were machal Shabbos, again, all b'shoigeg chatos. And you're chayiv because you did avodah zarah. Why? This will be an example. Sharei shloishes or isurim bo'im ka'achas. Wow. No, all of these isurim is an isur on the man, right? You cannot shecht l'avodah zarah. You cannot shecht on Shabbos. And you cannot shech kachem b'chutz. So no, 1 second. Kachem b'chutz. No, 1 second. You can't shech kachem b'chutz. Yeah. You can never shech kachem b'chutz. I would say Shabbos isn't the Shabbos is l'chayda the isur is the isur koilel. So you can't shech on Shabbos, but you can't shech even chulin on Shabbos. That's the word. And you can never shecht l'shem avodah zarah. So kacham achutz and avodah zarah are two isurim that are always there. And Shabbos is only for Shabbos, but Shabbos is not the isur cheft. Shabbos means you cannot do a shechit on Shabbos. Very good.
Does it need to be koilo?
No, here together. Here is babas achas and the Rambam writes shloishas ka'achas. It's not correct. He's saying that the Rambam is giving it's both babas achas and the isur koil. Now, now there's a nuance. The nuance is that did you violate them all at the same time? So that will only be that if only at the end of the act of zvicha you said that I'm doing it l'shem avodah zarah. But if lo yhoisa kavanasa lekach, right? In other words, that this person, God forbid, from the beginning of the slaughtering, they already did l'shem avodah zarah. So listen to what happened. So the moment you began to cut the neck of the animal, the animal itself is already usher. It becomes a prohibited animal. Once the animal is already considered tikreves avodah zarah, so the shchutei chutz doesn't go on it. And shchutei chutz only begins when you shech either both of the trachea and the esophagus, or at least reif shnayim. The nimsa that kishkamer ashchita shacha be'emasur lekarben. This animal was not fit for a carbon. The animal is not fit for a carbon. It's not included in shchitas chutz. Or hoisa chatos oif. And already half of the kana was already severed. And we learned in Uchas Tereifos that unlike the esophagus, unlike the veshet, the kana could be severed exactly 50%. The animal was still kosher. All that's needed here is that little nick to make it roiv. The point is that little nick, if it was done b'Shabbos l'shem avodah zarah, that's another example where they all came together. Chayv shalosh chatois. And you don't have to give the case that the Rambam brought out before, that you only had in mind l'shem avodah zarah by the end of the shchit. So what was it? No. You chayv to chatois. Why? I ain't isur chalal yisur. Another great example. Because the day of Shabbos and the day of Yom Kippur began at the same time. 1 second. Yom Kippur is Shabbos. And yes, Yom Kippur is Yom Kippur and Shabbos is Shabbos. And since they both begin exactly at the same time, you'll be chayv to chatois. That's the example we spoke of before. That's called Isur Moisav, that the Chashi, you have to bring 3 chatois. Eishes ish and Eishes ach. Why? Because she became married and she became your brother's wife when she got married at the same time. Nida is Isur Moisav. She, the same woman with whom you cannot have a relation, she cannot even have a relation with her husband. For sure not with any other man while she's a nida. So once the status of a nida adds to her isur on other men, it also will add on the men to whom she anyways was not allowed to have a relation with. Now, Yivama means the woman, if her husband would die, she would fully leave. If a man has a relation with one's father, he's chayv to ervas avicha loisegale. Even though the pshat means the woman with whom your father was married to. No, it means the father, and because of a homosexual relation, the ezachar leisishkav, the chen abal achei aviv, uncle chayv shtayim ervas achiyach avicha loisegale. And in other words, the point is that they come at the same time. Now, here we go. By the way, there's going to be a nuance about these two cases here in Halacha Aleph that the Rambam will clarify in Perek Hey, and you'll see it's not exactly the way you might understand. If a man has a Habala Zechor, that means he was active in a homosexual relation, and then behavior Zechor Aleph, and then he was passive, Behelam Echad. Now, we're going to see that Rambam writes clearly in the next chapter that's only Abba B'Shem Gufim. I want you to know that's only if it was the same person. The Rambam writes Shnei Gufim. Shnei Gufim means we consider being active and being passive as 2 Gufim. But clearly you'll see it's only because it was the same person. Same person, same shame, chayiv 1. here the Rambam also is going to write explicitly, my friends, in Pei to K, we're speaking about the same animal. So he was active, and he was the active one in the bestiality, and then he was passive. Because also hashoichav b'hanishkav b'behema uzachur kibeila achas. Okay, now comes the big case. Chavra, Dovi, you came at the right time. Yesh boil be'ila achas. No, it's even though on one hand we said that if you do many avedas, behela mechot, you're chayiv for each and every one. Here we added that you can do one act, not many avedas. If because of the three exceptions, isur halal isur, isur moisav, and isur koilon, all of the avedas are shaykh, even though it's only one act, different shemois, you'll be chayiv like alachas va'achas. So in the cases of bios, asurais, we're going to find a case where there's going to be one man and one woman, and there's going to be one, God forbid, relation, that was awesome, from 8 different sins, and there's a hecha timtza where it will not be isur halal isur, and indeed you'll be chayiv 8 chatois ketzad. Now, let me just give you the background, the family tree. And this is mamash done on purpose. The Rambam is using biblical characters, but it's not the setup, as you'll see clearly, the way they were in the Torah. So yes, there is a Yaakov. Yaakov has 3 wives, Zilpah and Rachel. Happens to be that in the case of the Rambam, guys, remember, Zilpah is not Lavan's daughter. In the Torah and in our Zaydas and the historical, Zilpah, Lavan was the father. Lavan was the father of all of Yaakov's 4 wives. Right? Rachel and Leah had the same father and mother, and the Bilhah and Zilpah did not have the same mothers. Not negaya for here. In our case, you have to, for this to work, Zilpah is not Lavan's daughter, Rachel is. Yaakov was married to a 3rd wife. And from he doesn't even give a name. And from the 3rd wife, he had Reuven and other sons. So first of all, remember that clearly. Another intro over here. Yaakov has a half brother from his mother's side. That's going to be mentioned over here. Yitzchak, in the case of the Rambam, who's also Yaakov's father, is still alive. Yitzchak has half a brother from Yitzchak's father's side and a half a brother from Yitzchak's mother's side. All of these steps create the following halach. Okay. If you don't remember all of these steps, it will become clear when we learn it. Yaakov, that has a daughter, Shoisolei Bas Mizilpa. And we're going to give the daughter's name Tibna. Now, like I mentioned, even though that in the Torah, in the Emes, it's in our Zayda story, Zilpah was Lavan's daughter, and a man biblically may not have a relation with his granddaughter. In our case, Zilpah was not Lavan's daughter, even though Lavan is Yaakov's father-in-law, because Yaakov married Rachel. The word Leah is not mentioned, but Lavan is allowed to marry her. Okay, so let's call her Timnah. Nasa Lavan Timnah. So far, just to note, there's no Isser over here. He married his son-in-law. He married his son-in-law's daughter from another wife, and the Lavan had a daughter from Timnah, and her name is Serach. The Ein Lavan Bas El Rachel Lovado. So the Rambam has to write it because he knows that we know. Whoa, how is that possible? Okay. Now, Halkop, what's going on? It comes out that Serach is Bas Yaakov, clear, and Va'achois Ishtoi Me'avio. In other words, he's married to Rachel. Who fathered Rachel? Lavan. Serach also fathered this Serach. Rachel and they're sisters. Can a man marry his sister's wife? No, when the sister is alive. Now, Vehein Shnei Yisurim Abayim Ka'achas. What's the 2 Yisurim on Yaakov Dovi? Granddaughter and wife sister. I know they're not exactly the same. Granddaughter is always Asur, but as long as Rachel is alive, and when did this Isur come into effect? When she was born. Moment Sarach is born, Yaakov has 2 sins with her. So we don't say Enis or Chalanis. That's already two Chatois if a relation would have happened. But we're not done yet. Now, Nisei Serach Reuven. And as we just explained over here, who is Reuven, guys? Reuven is Yaakov's son from another wife. Okay. V'nesra al sha'ar b'nei Yaakov. And now, as a daughter to Yaakov, as a daughter-in-law to Yaakov, she now becomes asar on all of others Yaakov's children. That's a new Isur. Because like we said, Reuven is from another wife. But now none of Reuven's brothers are allowed to marry her because she's an Eishesach, and therefore, since this third Isur is Chal, so Noisava Isur LeYaakov, because she is, even though she's the daughter-in-law. So you would say, daughter-in-law is Asr anyway, I know that, but now there's other family members prior to which she was allowed to marry, and now not. So now we have three Isurim that were not Chal, that are Chal now to Yaakov. Now, so she was married to Reuven. Reuven dies, or Reuven divorced her. Nisa Serach Zu La'achi Yaakov Me'imoi. So Yaakov has a brother, but only a maternal brother. Now, why does it only have to be a maternal brother? You're going to see soon. No, 1 second. But the point over here is that now she is Eishes Ach. Now she is Eishes Ach, correct? Not Kalosei, another is. Mitoich shenesra al sha'ar achei Yaakov. Why is that? Also Eishes Ach, or the Isur of Eishes Ach is Chal and Yaakov was her brothers. So Noisel Yaakov Isur Eishes Ach. So that's 4 Chatois. And now this woman is constantly becoming a widow, just to make this case possible. Meis Oigeresh, again, that marriage came to, here in California, came to its conclusion, right? It concluded death or divorce. And now, guys, Halkov, this Serach marries Yishmael. So this marriage is not prohibited. Because don't forget that your uncle can marry a niece. You know, in that direction. So
Yishmael married to Reuven?
Yeah, but Reuven died already. Everyone died over here. Whoever she marries, at some point they die. Now you call them a black widow. There's Yisurim, there's issues about this, but we're not going into that. That's already okay. So now is she married Yishmael? So here we say mitoich shenesra al sha'ar ache Yishmael. So noisa ba isur leYaakov in this direction, which is Eishes Achi Aviv. Eishes Achi Aviv, right, is another isur. Cannot marry the wife of your father's brother. Yishmael is Yitzchak's brother. In this case, Yishmael is Yitzchak's brother paternally. Very good. Not maternal, paternally. Now, Meis Yishmael, V'nofla, so we're up to 5. V'nofla liyibam lifnei Yitzchak. Why is that? No, like this. He's allowed because he was married to Yaakov's half brother. Yeah, because Chayv Yibum. Now, Midrabanan, Yitzchak is not allowed to marry her. Why is Yitzchak not allowed to marry her? Because she was married to who? Guys, Haltkop, who was she married to? She was married to Reuven, Kevin, remember that. Who is Reuven to Yitzchak? A grandson.
Son, yeah.
A grandson. One of the shniyas is that you cannot marry your grandson's wife, but that's only Asun Midrabanan. If it would have been prohibited midoiraisa, right, then the marriage would not take hold. They violated the Rabbanan, but Yitzchak did Yibum. Like we mentioned, it doesn't bother us because on a biblical level, they're allowed to get married. So mitoich shenesra al sha'ar echav noisa ba isur leYaakov. Also, now you have another isur mishum eishes aviv Now, Eisha Savav, in other words, the point is that normally Eisha Saviv, she's anyways Asura. No. Now you have a new Isur, and because of Eisha's Ish, Shishnei Yisurim Boim Ka'acha. So we had 5, so now we're up to 6, and we're up to 7. Now the Rambam writes, what were to happen if Yaakov B'Shoigig had a relation with this Serach, but while she was a Nida, Nida is like we already mentioned, that's the Isur Moisav, that's the 8th. And she did it. Now what's important over here is that she's here still married to Yitzchak. Because if she would not be married, we're speaking about she's married to Yitzchak, so she's still Eishes Aviv. She is still an Eishes Ish. Prior to that, Eishes Achi Aviv. Prior to that, Eishes Achiv. You understand? You have to go backwards. You have all the 8. Ubechaye Rachel Eishes Yaakov, another detail. Because don't forget that one of the 8 is that she, Serach, we began since she was fathered by Lavan, not Zilpah. Serach. As is Rachel, that's an Isur that's not forever. So this has to happen when Rachel is still alive, because if Rachel is no longer alive, a man is allowed to marry his wife's sister if the wife is not alive. If he just divorces her, he can't. So that's the case. Mishum, let's go all of them. Bas Bitoy, like we mentioned, because it's Zilpah's daughter. It's Timnah's daughter. Timnah is Yaakov's daughter, it's his granddaughter. Ashchois Ishtoi, so Rachel's sister, because they were fathered by Lavan. Kalasai, daughter-in-law, because she married my friends. Reuven, even though Reuven dies, Kalasai remains. Eishes Achiv, how great is that? Eishes Achi Aviv, and Eishes Aviv, Umishum Eishes Ish, Umishum Nida, Bechein Kol Kayotze Bazeh. Wow. Halachigim. Kol Eilu Shetayasa Zuer Alei Yisur Moisev. The whole part of Yisur Moisev is it's not enough for you to say potentially if there would have been a brother. There has to actually someone else that the same chefza, which in our case, this Serach, she actually becomes Asura on him prior to which she was not. We say your choice of Isur Acher Lozeh. It all began. Anyways, the first Isur, guys, is granddaughter. So, just that should have cut out all the other Isurim. Ein Isur Chalal Isur. But if there isn't an actual person to whom she's now Asur, or if this person would have had brothers, so you trace Isur Lazakim. Great. Now, halacha dal. Guys married to 3 wives. Bo al ima shel achas mihem oy gevalt. So, guys, a man married a woman and her niece, which is not prohibited. Man married a woman and that woman's niece. So you get it? So when he had a relation, al ima shel achas mihem, shehi aim ima shel shniya. That's the way it works. And in that case, she aim avia shall shlishis oigeval. So let's go. He writes out in number 16. So Yaakov marries Leah, who's the daughter of Lavan. He also marries the daughter of Rachel. Guys, we're speaking about he married the daughter of Rachel. He's not married to Rachel over here. Okay, that's the niece. And he married the daughter of Lavan's son. Thus, Lavan's wife is Yaakov's mother-in-law, the mother of his wife's mother, and the mother of his wife's father. And all of this is mamash mutter. No marriage was done by Israel. Okay. Now, Afalpishas Kenazu, he, both mother-in-law and mother Chamoisai, the aim Chavid, as we mentioned, Ushloisha Shemoisheim, these are 3 different Isurim. I ain't Isur Chalal Isur. No. The Rambam is speaking about a case, the Isur Bas Achasu. How can that happen? How can you marry them at the same time? I'll tell you, I can marry them at the same time. These 3 women, though, we sent one shliach like Kabbalah. That would be the best example. All of these 3 wives send one shliach to allow that person to be makabel kedushin from the prospective husband, and Yaakov gave 3 prutas to the one act, and so there was one act of kedushin, which it has to be in a mitzias where they all got married at the same time for this to be shy. So here you would argue, this is a exception because there is a pasuk in the Torah Shenema, Be'isha ubebito ubas beno ubas bito. It says in Parshas Achrimois, Sha'ara heina zima he. If you remember the Chazal, the word he is in the singular and it's not needed. Zima, what says he? Hakasav asa hashloisha gufim keguf echad. That's an exception. Lefikach yechashvu hashloisha shemais kishem echad. That will be the only case where even if Yaakov will have a relation with this woman, he'll be chayiv only once. And the final halacha, hey, abol, if a man has a relation, God forbid, with one sister, and in the case where this woman is also achos aviv, and the case where this woman is also achos imai, how can that be? Hold on, guys. We're not done with this chapter. The Rambam will explain how that can be. So here we say, chayiv shalosh chatoos. Shenemar, erbas achoisoi gila, a pasuk in Kedoshim. The Torah writes this pasuk actually twice. And the whole thing, erbas achoisoi gila, is lechayiv al achoisoi b'fnei atzmai, even though she achois imai v'achois aviv, for example. Hey, so now we have 2 exceptions. We have one exception where you're going to be chayiv, like we said in Halacha Daled, only once, even though l'chura, based on the rules, they should have been chal because it's babasachas. Here we're speaking the opposite, that here, no matter what, for every type of sister, your father's sister, your mother's sister, one woman, here the Torah is going to say that you will be chayiv 3 chatois. Now, what's the case? A man that had a relation with his mother, by the way, that's usher. It's until now we've been giving scenarios in halacha beis, everything was mutter. Everything was mutter. The first is, even though there was one shnia, right? When Yitzchak married his granddaughters, but it was chal, the yibum over there. Okay, but anyways, kadoin shabal imai, which is usher, and listen to what happened. And this relation, God forbid, gave 4 to 2 daughters. Now, what are these 2 daughters? They're also his sisters, right? Because he had a relation with his mother. And then Nocha Isser, and he had a relation with one of his daughters, and now if Kishiyavai Hamamzer Hazeh, this Bain, Albas Hashenis, Shehi Achois Imoy Hamamzeres, Shehi Achois Amiyaviv, Shehi Achois Aviv Me Imoy. Then, even though, right, the din over here is that in our case, you're going to be chayiv 3 chatois, even though what's the issue? The issue is, it's not about, the issue is that there's only one shame. The issue is because of sisterhood. No, the Torah repeated the words in Kedoshim, achoy ervas, achoy sagila, to tell you that every tzad, achois, is another shame. And therefore, you're going to be chayiv 3 chato'os. This concludes Perek Dalet, and today's final chapter, Perek Hey. We're going to continue learning about biyos harbe be'erva achas, which is another classic case. It means a man did not know that he cannot have a relation with her. And in the state of one helam, he did many biyos with the same woman. So here the din will be is that since it was with the same goof, you're only chayiv once. Person's wife, let's say, is an Ida. He doesn't know that. It was a Shaila, there was a mistake. He thought she's Tohira. And he had various relations. You can argue he did different actions. No, he's only chayiv once because it was with the same goof. We're going to learn here clearly what we spoke out in the beginning of the previous chapter of the meaning of helamachas, that helamachas was always a very key factor. So if a person repeated the same sin, helamachas, he's going to be chayiv only once. Like if a person, plowed and then he plowed and he plowed, he violated many times, behelamachas, he's going to be chayiv once. But if in between the plowings, he became aware that action was asur, even if he forgot again, it's called yediyos are mechalkois lechatois. We're going to learn about if a man, specifically by a nida, had a relation with his wife. Shaloi b'shas vesta. Shaloi b'shas vesta doesn't only mean while she's not a nida. It means as we from a people practice the vestos. So there's vesta chodesh, there's vesta flaga. You have the oina beininus. Not during those periods. It was completely unforeseen, and during the act of tashmish, she becomes a nida. It's not even a shoygig. You do not bring a carbon chatzis. It's called an oinus. However, we will learn that if the shas tashmish, a woman has her flow of dam, then to be poitish from a woman is asur. And if a person was poitish from that woman, from his wife, without knowing that it's asur, interestingly, we're going to see that this is a different type of violation. So it's shayach that it'll be chayv to chatois. In the case where he had a relation to her, the shas vesta, not when she was in it, on the day of oinas hachodesh, prior to the time that she has to make a bedikah, by thinking I'll have a relation early. There, we don't say he's a shoygig. There, if he had a relation and then he removed himself, it would be chayv to chatois, as the Rambam will explain. Perikei has 7 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Habal erva, same erva. Biois harbe behelamecha. Even if, many times means over a period of many days. He never became aware that having a relation with her is prohibited. And that's like it was with the same woman, guf echad. So it's considered one shoygig. And therefore, afterwards, oh my God, she's chatas achas. The mikvah, they discovered the mikvah is not kosher. Man is married, she went to the mikvah. Terrible tragedy. So he's chayv once. But if he had a relation with her, but then he discovered whatever it was that it's not good, and he forgot. They both forgot. It was the same love. It's one issur. It's with the same body, same person, but there was yediyah bentayim. Then yes, chayv akol b'ila. And that's the meaning of the words that yediyos mechalkos hashgagas. Halacha beis. Now the Rambam is using a great example. See, when I eat chaylev is just chaylev. But if a person has a relation, 2 people are involved. The Rambam wants to make a point that this din that yediyos hamachalkos doesn't have to go both ways. So if one knew and one didn't, if one had yediyah bentayim, they always did it b'shreigig. But one had yediyah bentayim and one didn't. So everyone will be chayv a difference. And the one who didn't have yediyos will be chayv one chatzis. The other one, no matter if it was the man or the woman, that's halacha beis. And the woman, and she forgot. The act was always done b'shreigig, but she knew in between. Shenimtzu habiyas etzla was b'halamis harbe, and he never knew. We tolerate for the same people. Imagine. They did the sin together. It's about having a relation physical together. Who may be chatas achas because there was no yediyos that were machalkos, and she will bring al kol biyobiyah, and the same thing goes in the other gender. Hoyeloi who yediyos bentayim, and she never was aware. Who may be chatas harbe, he chatas achas.
But didn't she cause him to sin? Doesn't she have to bring a offering because of causing?
How did she cause him to sin? Maybe he caused her to sin. She knew
that she's
no. Kevin, during the act, they forgot.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It must be known if you didn't do it b'shreigig, then that's not shayach to chatas. They did it. The act was done by hella. Hella means they did not know it's asur. What happened before? Halacha gimel. Now, that's all, guys. One goof. You'll see how about goof is. So it's one shame, one goof. Even many mices, if there wasn't yediyah b'tayim, chayvachs. Haba ala royes harbe behelam echad. Haba different people. So then, af al pi shkola mishem echad, same isur. Let's say eishes ish, God forbid. Different people. Hoyel vehem gufim mecholakim chayv al kalachas v'achas ketzad. Oh, great. Harei shabal chamish nashav. Man is married. We're speaking about prior to the chedim, where it was accepted to marry more than one wife at the same time. A man has 5 wives, so there's no issue of someone else's wife. The issue here is nida, and all 5 of them are nidas. And he forgot that you can't have a be'ila benida, or he did not know regarding all of them. That means he violated the same law. All b'shoying. Oy shabal chamesh achi Yosef, a man had a relation with 5 of his sisters or 5 of his daughters. Be'elam echad chayev al kol guf v'guf. It's very, these are the yesodis. So mekana tolame shezeh she'omru chachamim. Now we learned this, guys, in Perek Dalet. What did we learn in Perek Dalet? That if a man was active and passive, he's chayiv 1. Woo, says the Rambam. Now that we established that even if it's the same sin, the shoygei keva, and it's behelan achas, if it's with gufois michulakos, gufim michulakim, you're chayiv 2. So when we learned that haba al hazachur, if a man was active in a mishkav zachur, and he was the passive in a mishkav zachur, behelan achas, he's chayiv chatos achas, which is what we learned in Perek Dalet. It doesn't fit with this rule. And a chanami. The Rambam used the words, they're 2 gufais. That was the big chiddush. It means it's 2 different actions. But this clarifies it's only if it was with the same male. Same thing with the behemo. Whether he was active in both, whether he was he was active in one and passive with the other. No matter, since it's 2 different people, and that also further clarifies that which we learned just at the end of the first chapter of the first halach of Perek Dalet. Even though there it's vague, no, this rule clarifies that din of chatos achas because it was the same behemoth. Or it is, even though it was not done at the same time. That's the chiddush. Even though it was not done at the same time, right? Active and passive. There we say, so it's called 2 different gufim. It was a different way of sinning with them. Yechayiv achas because it was the same. If it's a different zuchur, different behema, yechayiv.
Is each gufim absent? If you goes to another gufim, it goes back to the original one.
No. So it's just a point, yechayiv for that one. That's clear. That's what we're learning. No, it's a man has a relation with a nida, with his wife. That's a nida. That would be a great example. From a person, a shoygig that you can relate to. Guy with his daughter, all the cases, a guy went into it, he thought it's his wife, it was his daughter. It's hard to man, she was a nida. They didn't know there was a mistake in the halacha. There was a shoygig. The word is, it can be done after many days.
That wasn't my question.
Why should it be mafsik? No. Halacha dal. Same concept. She didn't know that it's asur. Again, it's about many animals. This rule, sharei gufin michulakim. Clear. Halacha. And by the way, you know where you don't say this? You don't say this by inanimate objects. Like if a person eats chaylev. If a person eats chaylev, kazai is chaylev, vikazai is chaylev, vikazai is chaylev, behelamachas is chayv 1. Shemach. You don't say it's different chaylevs. Here, okay. Halacha. A case, her husband trapped, and she heard that he died, and then by the way, she heard she has to have an 8, or so she shouldn't have gotten remarried, or she heard Eidim Shemes. Then he says whether she did it wrongfully al piyatzma or she did it al pi beis din, and then she discovered that her husband is alive. Now chayev is korban echad, which is great. But that's if she married one man. You understand the same part. Even though with that one new husband, she had many be'ilos. It was one goof. But the Ibnisais la'anoshim harbe. You know why anoshim harbe, guys? Overheaded. She married Reuven. She thought Reuven died. She married Chaim. Chaim Taka died. So she married Yankel. In other words, here she'll be Chaim for every man separately. Oisha Zimsa, God forbid, or a case where it was usher. But anoshim harbe. Chayeves chatas akol ishvish. These are the rules. Because they are gufin mechulakim. Even though it's the same shoygik. Now listen to this. And now the same woman, and again, he had another relation with her again. Because he didn't know that you can't have a relation with a nida. So here you would argue, based on what we learned above, guys, it'll only be chayiv achas, because it's with his same wife. Here we don't say so. Wow. Here is the exception, but we don't view it as an exception. The Rambam gives words. Chayiv al kol pam upam. In every state of new nidus. That's what I call pam means. Af api shuhu be'elam echad. And he guf echad. So how does it fit? Shezman nidus ze chutz mizman nidus hasheni. And it's as if kishtei nashim nidois. Wow. Halacha haba al ishtoi. Now here's the key, guys. So when a woman has the actual flow with hergish, she's margish, need the doirais. The ace or the shas best means that since we are constantly looking to find a new pattern that's kavua in the woman, that's what halacha says. So even if she was not regular until this time, but we say that maybe she's beginning a pattern. So let's say if a woman sees dam on the face on koyach mar cheshbin, maybe it is the size of the moon chav ches, and she's going to see dam again on next month chav ches kislev. So if you remember, what we learn is we paskin, right, that these the vesta chodesh and the vesta floda only eats up either the oinas hayoim or the oinas halayla. We're not going to get into here the oina beninis that we paskin, it goes for 24 hours. You have the sheet of the orzurua, but just in the general concept, however we practice it correctly today. So we say that if a woman has a vest on chav ches, she's going to see dam. She's going to see dam on chav ches on next month, and if she saw it during the day, and if she sees it at 12 p.m., we don't only say that from 12 p.m. on, even from the beginning of the day, there has to be a separation. Now, if a man has a relation with his wife, then he's not the innocent. If she got a period during the relation. Here we're speaking about shaloi v'shas vesta. It wasn't during the vestas. And it happened, God forbid, during Tashmish, she begins to have a flow of blood. Here, we don't even call that a shoygeg. Here, first of all, we establish a shoygeg means, that if he would have taken another measure, you don't have to take it. Had he taken another measure, he could have found out. The evil badak yafa, the digdid b'she'elos, either looking more for the mitzias or learning better the halachas, then he would never have come to that sin. That's the meaning of a shoygeg. There was a certain amount of prevention that could have happened. Well, and that's why the Torah says he has to bring a kapara. Not only was she a tohira, but was shas vestabal. So ein ze elo oinus. So first of all, lefika. Which means that after the relation, she examined herself and she finds blood on it. And we're going to learn in this chapter the three phases. There's mamish right afterwards. There's another phase. There's a third phase, because there can come a point where we say, even though she found blood on the towel that she used to clean herself, maybe she only began to bleed after Tashmish was over. But in the case where we know that it was right afterwards. If he finds blood on his aid, it's much worse, because where did the blood come from? If not, then from her. Doesn't matter. So we know that she saw blood during Tashmish. They are completely exempt. However, that's just the intro to the continuation of halachas im avad. On vestois, not that she was a nida, but so let me give my example of Oynas HaChodesh. Even though that in Chav Ches Mar Cheshvan she saw dam 12 p.m., which is why the bedika that we make next month, Chav Ches Kislev, should be done 12 p.m. or later. We don't make a bedika prior. And they had a relation prior. It means he thought, no, it's taka 12 p.m. So I can chaparain. The dima, what did he think? That even though she might see dam today, it's only going to be after the same time in the sha'ah. Sheyival the yifresh koydem shetira dam. Turned out that he was wrong. That will be an example of a man who's chayiv shoygig for nidi. In other words, there's another type of shoygig. We're not going into it right now. Right? A man did not know the mitzias. No, she didn't know. She's like, you gave an example before. She went to the mikveh last month, and it turned out, God forbid, that the mikveh there was a problem. A problem. There was a problem with chatzitza. Here we're speaking about no. She was tohira, but the b'shas samach. It's called samach levesta. If she has dam during Tashmish, then the Chayiv Chatos, Lafika, Chim Nimsadam al Eit Shaloi. Now, if he, after the relation, cleans himself and he finds blood on his towel, then we know that she had dam during, if not, how did blood get on him? So, Shneim Tameim, Vaday Tameim, and they're both Chayavim Karvin, because the Bia was Samach Levesta, which was Asura. Nimsal Eit Shalah. Now, Eit Shalah, like we mentioned, there's two issues. Are they tamei? If a man has a be'ilah with a nida, he's tamei like her 7 days. And are they chayv carbon? So we'll say like this. Im kin so miyad. Miyad means mamish immediately. Kishapeda shabal. If there was no time, we're speaking about the moment they separated, she right away cleaned herself. Then we say shneim tameim. It's just like finding a bedika on his aid. Here, even though it's on hers. So they're both tameim and they're both chayav and carbon. That's step number one. That's time number one. Time frame number two is that there was a little bit of time. How much time? The time that it would take for her to put her hand under her cot or under her kesses, under her pillow, or under her blanket, under her mattress. The time that it takes to take out an aid and to make a bedika. If that amount of that's a few seconds. If that amount time passed and then she did a kinuach, so since very close to the biyah. So we say like this: shneim tameim b'safek. But on the other hand, they're both potter from a carbon. Because to bring a chatos, you have to know for sure. Here, there's a small doubt. Again, both of them, because could be she only began to bleed after the biyah, but it was so close that as far as tuma is concerned, that's called the safek tuma that we have to be machna. If it's biyah machmas tashmish, we don't need the word hargasha because we say argasha b'lavadat if you remember. Okay. Now then the final phase is that if the time that it would take for a woman to get off her bed, and after she gets off her bed, then she should clean herself. If that amount of time passed, and only afterwards can saddam. So here we say that her husband is completely tohira. We don't even say there's a suffix over here. Gavaldik. They're vadai paturami carbon that we already had before, and she's vadai tameya. She's a nida now. Point is that no problem. And now today's final halacha says. Again, we're speaking about the case where if she sees damach mastashmish, it's taka chayv chatos, not mezid. He had a relation when she was not a nida, but he shouldn't have, and he did it like we said before. Let me go even more. In the times of Chazal, where most women were very kavua, and she taka knew when she's getting it. Many women didn't have protection then, but she knew she's getting it 12 o'clock chavches. She would go to where you go to the bathroom. It was that kavua. So he thought, okay, I know it's a veska. It's going to happen chavches 12 o'clock. It always happened 12 o'clock for the past, since when? Chazal say you can't be with her the whole line of saying. And he was with her. And now the word hergish is not needed for her to become a nida. We mentioned before that if a woman sees dam in her urine, if a woman sees dam during tashmish, and if a woman sees dam on a bedika, on an eid abediko, Chazal say argasha malavadata. The point of a gisha is because it's possible for a couple to be together, God forbid, and she has dam, not machmas tashmish, they won't even know about it. Then there's nothing to talk about. Here is that she found out. She's tummy regardless. Finding out means that, oh my God, I'm a nida. So normally the normal reaction will be a man will be praidish. He has to remember the halacha. You're not allowed to be praidish when the avid is with kishoy. As we learned in Ilchas Suribira, because there is hana'ah from the perisha. Until the avid will die. So what happened? Now the imla yadash asal litrash miyad. He didn't know this halacha. And do peidish kishu miskashe. Now here's the vart. Here's the chiddush. So based on what we learned right now, taka shoygig. But if it's the guf echad, you should be chayv one chatos. So here will be the exception. Here will be gaval. Paskins that I'm a michayv two chatois. But we're going to have to nuance a little bit. Achas al knisosa sharei bal nida. Ba'achas al yitziyasai, sheyitziyah hanaloi kibiyasai. This perisha is like another biyah. Now, one second. Let's read it. Let's speak up. This is important. It has to be that it was, he knew that you're not allowed to be boil. That was that type of mistake. In other words, it wasn't both a shoygig of a lack of knowledge. If both of them would have been, he did not know that he cannot be boil a woman, samuch levesta. He did not know you cannot be proidish. This, then it would be considered one type of chatos with one goof. So then you chayv one. It's a different type of not knowing. Then is where we say that one is, am I allowed to have be'ilah? Am I able or unable? Let me see. Not am I allowed. Am I able or unable? He thought, Mitzias, that he's able to have a bia prior to getting her done. He'll be able to do it. Here, he did not know that hafrasha is asuram. Yachal and Eine Yachal is one type of shoygig. You understand? Not knowing it Isur is another type of shoygig. He did not know, lack of knowledge, just like he did not know the prohibition of being Polish from one's wife who's in it from an either. While he has a kishoy, here's which is taka. Taka two be'ilois. And chanami, but if a man has two be'ilois with the same person under the same helm, and who adin b'shar haroyos, she'im shagag ubala erva, aldas shehi muteres, the noidaloi shehi erva. And at any time where you find out, because we say sheyitziyosei hanoki biyosei, and the im lo yada she'asa litrish miyad u peidish u'miskashu miyad. Here also, both shoygigs, in other words, the bia and the yitzia are considered two only in the case that we mentioned above. If they're both coming from a lack of knowledge in a halacha, then you'll be chayv in a chayv alachatos achas she'hakoil shkoga achasi with the guf echon. Gewaldig.
Thank you, Rabbi Zajac.